So thank you for joining me, you two.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much for
Jessa.
having us.
I mean, I guess we should start at the beginning, sort of. Like what was the situation before all this transformation and healing happened? Like, paint a little background for us.
Yeah, so our marriage, we were Mormons and we grew up in the church, sixth generation, born into it, all of that. So it was just kind of like going along as we had been directed, by our parents and by the culture and by the church itself. And infidelity entered the marriage for a number of reasons, which, like could take an entire episode or three to go into. But
Mm.
so that actually was a huge catalyst for us in trying to understand our place in the church. And the main thing that sort of catapulted us out was as we went through the healing process of that infidelity in the church's disciplinary action, which is not really a healing, it's a disciplinary.
Oh, okay.
And so they're not really interested in, or maybe they don't understand why people do things they do. They just want you to behave correctly.
Hmm.
And so after we came out the end of that,
Which was a year long.
is a
We
year
did a
long.
year long disciplinary kind of action thing that we did in the church the way the church wanted it to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we came out the other side of that, a little bit disinterested in the church, sort of one foot in, one foot out sort of thing. And we continued like that for about another year and slowly sort of like getting less and less active in the church.
Yeah.
I'll add real quick. In that process, though, we did everything right. And after the year completed, everything was restored to normal in regards to our activity, like especially because Britain was the one who had committed the acts of infidelity. And yeah, after that year process, they were like, your full fellowship, like everything was restored as if
Oh,
healing
so
had
that's what you
been
mean restored.
accomplished.
Okay, right, right. Sins
Yeah,
wiped clean kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
you could come back and be a full active member. Good job, pat on the back. Yeah, so we did that whole process, and according to the church's definition, we were through it.
Okay.
But
I'm
the situ
assuming that means you weren't actually through it, the way you're saying that, right? It must have felt incomplete or like, wait a minute, what's
I would say zero healing occurred.
okay.
Zero real healing occurred in that
Yeah.
experience. So
Well,
yes,
can I
but we
ask you,
were,
like, what were the fundamental messages you were getting through that process about marriage, about sex, about infidelity, about commitment? Like, what were you supposed to be thinking about this that it would be done?
that's a very good question. I would, like there wasn't much of a message.
Mm,
Let's just start there. There wasn't much of a message about it. Basically, I had sinned. I needed to stop sinning.
okay.
Um, and I could be forgiven and I could have my marriage still and it'll be better than it was before. I do remember that. Actually, that was a prophetic statement.
Yeah, right. They didn't know what they were
They're like,
promising.
it'll get better than it was. And I'm like, uh-huh. I remember thinking, you have no idea. But
Yeah,
but the truth is that that actually did happen, but it wasn't because of the church at
right.
all.
Right.
And so like the message wasn't really there. There wasn't support for her. There wasn't true support for my healing or understanding.
Yeah.
It was more
And
like you can't say prayers publicly. You can't hold a calling and serve in the church. You need to make sure that you're at church every single Sunday. You need to make
Uh,
sure that you're
so you're
meeting
sort of
with,
like basically penance or something, right? Like this year
yeah,
long.
yeah, like
Okay.
if I messed up again, it would have been excommunication sort of thing, right?
Okay. And no support, Carleigh, for you, the person and the role you were in this. Nothing to help you
correct.
process or connect or make sense
No.
of this, or what do we even do?
No, in fact,
Wow.
I actually realized through this journey, when we had that very first meeting to begin this process, it was us, the two of us, and a room full of men. There was men from our neighborhood that were all given these positions of authority. They call them callings. It's for anyone in the audience who's a Mormon, they'll be like, "Oh, I know what they're talking about." But
Right.
essentially,
Right.
it was like 12 men who none of them were really trauma informed therapists. Actually, one was a therapist, but anyway, they all like bore witness to the confession of our sins. his sins. And then for me, there was no female representation. There was
Mm,
nobody that I could really confide in. I felt so much shame being the one who had been betrayed. And it's not something people really feel comfortable talking about or sharing. And so the only people while I was in the throes of this story that knew about it were literally the men who were in that room.
mm,
And so then I would go throughout that year as I had significant postpartum depression compounded by the betrayal trauma PTSD. And so when I would go and ask for help with my children or just help emotionally support, I actually was asked, like told, well, we don't really want people to think you're taking advantage of them. Like there was literally nobody that I could lean on,
mm.
and there was no programs, no female support, no friendships. Yeah, there was, I really learned through that there was nothing for women, especially, that was
Yeah,
offered by way of healing. It became actually more traumatic, actually,
right.
that year.
Right. Okay, so you continue on, Britain. You were there's another year after
Yeah.
that that
Yeah. So what I should just say is that that kind of was the gateway of like us leaving the church and starting the healing process. But to answer your question of like what was our relationship like? What was it like? We we were we were disconnected emotionally. You know, over time it gotten worse. And initially when we got married it was pretty good. But you know, sexually there was not a lot of satisfaction on either side. And um, there was a lot of repression still from my upbringing in the church, tons of repression from her.
yeah.
And so my repression was acting out through the infidelity. Um, most of it was emotional based, so I was making relationships and doing some sexting, that type of stuff. But there was like basically one major uh, relationship that was more than just fiddling around. It was actually like more in person, and you know, we worked at the same place, and so there was that. But yeah, our relationship, like with our kids, like I would just say ultimately we were kind of like a standard run of the mill American couple.
Hmm.
And we didn't have emotional intelligence, we didn't have sexual education, we didn't have a connection with our body, we weren't embodied. Um, so that was the state of affairs.
Okay. So talk to me a little bit about the, I guess, growing discontent with what you were being, you know, given from the church
With the
and
church. Yeah.
experiencing in your relationship, right?
Yeah, I think ultimately I just, after we finished that process, he came out the other side just kind of like, I don't feel any different. I'm still feeling the same temptations as a man. Like I didn't want to feel those temptations to reach out to other women. It wasn't strong. Like this the temptations were worse during pregnancies because of how turned off she was, and you know, my programming around physical attraction and stuff. So I think with the discontent of the church, it was just like there really wasn't anything special that happened during that process.
Right.
And so as we came out the other side, we're just like, well, okay. And you know, we had also started to find that things like things that we were told were forbidden, like we started experimenting with wine, for example, and that was actually helping us
Mm.
connect a little bit more, is helping us to heal.
In Mormonism, wine is like a no-go. You drink wine and you're not
You're not even
qualified to be with
Alcohol at
yeah,
women.
can't
all,
go
right?
to
Not
Yeah,
wine
yep,
specifically, alcohol at all,
yep,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was like this growing discontentment. We were kicked out of, like, she was kicked out of her calling, like a calling is a job in the church. She was kicked out because she you know, we had a drink or two and we wouldn't swear it off anymore. It's not like we were
Uh,
drinking every day, but it was just
right,
like
right, right.
and we wouldn't
I
swear it
was
off.
basically given an ultimatum. Either you completely stop, but like we were calling wine a bottle. Literally, it was like our therapy, therapy in a bottle. We could actually talk and connect and process the difficulty. And so it was like here I had the same church leader who told me he didn't want women to think I was taking advantage of them when I asked for help, also was
Right.
now telling me that something I found that was actually helpful that I now needed to like basically bend my knee to what he thought was right and for my life or
Right.
else I couldn't have this calling, which I enjoyed. I was teaching Sunday school to some teenagers,
Yeah.
and I would teach them the word of wisdom, which talked about not drinking alcohol, and I taught it the way that the church wanted me to teach it. I wasn't disclosing to this, I
Right.
wasn't like being inappropriate according to the, but
Yeah.
he basically, yeah, gave me an ultimatum, and I was like, I can't do your ultimatums. Go ahead and
Yeah.
release me if you have to.
So, to what, I mean, how do you make sense, or to what do you credit your ability at that point in time to trust like yourselves? Because, you're talking generations of upbringing and training, and boy, you better adhere to every rule. And you must have been doing that. So there comes this moment where it's like, no, we're going to do what feels right to us.
Well,
Right. What
you
do you think
know,
allowed that to happen?
yeah, that's a great question. So during that year, of doing the things that the church wanted us to do, I had actually also been introduced to a trauma-informed yoga therapy container for women who had been through betrayal. And in that, I saw such a contrast. I actually had
Mm,
received holding and understanding and like, you know, guidance while also not getting it from the church. And it was through yoga, it was through other women who had been through the same thing. And as I began to learn about my body and learn about my own chakras and learn about behaviors connected to like an imbalance, I realized how out of balance I really was. And so it was through these other forms. Like I had a therapist, I was doing this women's group, I was doing regular yoga, and so it was a lot of those
mm,
actual healing modalities while simultaneously checking the boxes for what the church said would work, that helped me root into having the courage to go against the grain, do
yeah,
it different. But there was also major cognitive dissonance
I
that was
bet.
happening at this time too, because you're told all of these things will happen if you do X, Y, or Z. And then we began to do X, Y, and Z. And the very thing they said would happen wasn't what happened. It was the complete opposite. So we began to see that we had been lied to, or that there was something wrong, like that the
It wasn't
church,
adding up.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
It was an actual breaking point. It was a rupture. And this is the part where the magic really begins.
Okay.
Like we had started stepping out of the church's activity, going like once a month or once every 2 or 3 weeks. And that was considered, basically we're less active. That's when they send people over from the the ward, and they try to like get you to be active again. Hey, blah blah blah. But we had already been using a little bit of cannabis just because we found that it was interesting and it was helping us process and be more present as parents. And because we had never touched cannabis until our mid to late 30s, we didn't have sort of the trauma that people have when they're recreationally using it in their youth. So it was a lot more effective of a tool for us. But what really did it was my brother walked into a get together at my house, and he threw a bag of mushrooms down on the counter. He's like, "Hey, you got to try these." And I'm like, "I don't know about that. I was just thinking my brother's a junkie." And
So wait, your brother
he,
had left the church way before? Was
yeah,
he
he
further
was the
along?
one. He was the black sheep. So he
Okay.
was out, but he had already moved on a long time ago. And so I was like, no, I don't know about that. But he's like, well, you should just read this book. It's called How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan.
Hmm.
And I think like a week later, someone else also mentioned it to me, and I was like, "Oh, okay, well, got a little bit of a nudge." So I ended up reading it and or listening to it, and then afterwards, I was like really excited. I was like, I'm totally doing a ceremonial type of connection with mushrooms, and I
Yeah.
invited Carleigh to read the book, and I said, "Hey, if this is resonant for you, why don't we just do one together?" And that ended up happening in November of 2019.
Hmm.
And it was on a Saturday, and we started early, and we had everything worked out so the kids, all three kids could go, and we would have time by ourselves to just enjoy this experience and be alone. And and then process even afterwards. So like the whole day would they
Right.
would be gone, and that went really well. It was really powerful, more powerful even for her, but for me it was just a mind opening experience where my consciousness got to experience things that I had desired to feel and experience in the church but wasn't happening. And so, but the next day was Sunday, and so we had plans already to go to church. So we sort of like reluctantly got ready and showed up, and grandma was there because it was like a program for the kids. And we were still in the afterglow of the mushrooms.
Yeah.
And so we're in church, and this program, it just so happened to be this program where they go up, the kids like kind of like go up and give little quotes or scriptures. And essentially, they even get the littlest of kids that are like, what are the ages? Like 3 or 4 of those little ones? I don't
Yeah.
remember. But they get up there and they're in front of the microphone and they forget their lines that they've been practicing. Of course,
Right.
nothing's really authentic, it's all memorized, and they have a little teacher there that's right by the microphone, and she'll whisper in their ears. And as we were watching this happen, and through the perception of the medicine, we saw pure indoctrination happening before us, and we were like,
Uh,
holy shit, this is just, we're literally, they're just whispering in our ears what to say and how to be and who
what
we
to
are.
think? Yeah, everything.
Exactly. And so we
Wow.
looked at each other. We both tuned into this simultaneously, even though we weren't even sitting by each other. And we both were like, and then we looked behind, like behind the people in between us, and we saw each other and we're like, what? And so we just were like, that's it, we're done. And we walked out that day and we never went back.
Wow. Carleigh, do you want to speak a little bit to your experience with the mushrooms?
Yeah, so in my journey, I had already been doing like quite a bit of therapy, and I had realized, I had trauma from my childhood. I had things that I was really working through deeply. And in that journey, I had the most profound, beautiful, like emotional healing to where when I came out of it, I thought it really felt like 5 years of therapy in just an
Mm,
afternoon. It took me leaps and bounds, and I had revisited some moments in my life. Actually, I had revisited each one of the births of my children. We had 3 children at that point in time, and I like watched them like a movie. That was one of the gifts that the mushrooms had given me, and I was able to see myself and my emotional constitution. And I was able to notice that there were um, connections between me and what I was going through in my life and my children. And it just was so profound that I
mm,
came out the other side um, really being expanded into an emotional sensitivity and also like being divinely held in ways that I had never felt. And so like yeah, it the next week we were led to a school called the Institute of Healing Arts, which is in Utah, and it's a school of emotional intelligence education. And I signed up immediately for the following January. I was like, I've got to do this. I've got to
hmm
learn more that I do what I don't know. And it was that journey really was the beginning of me actually realizing I was completely codependent, realizing, all of these different things that were programs from my childhood, programs throughout the generations of my family line. We were both of us are sixth generation Mormon. And so, yeah, just what a gift it gave me to see that I could be free from so much that had really been a part of my identity my entire life up to that point.
Yeah. So let's talk about what's happened since and like how has this changed your sexual relationship?
Well, speaking about generational trauma, I identified throughout this journey that not only did I not have desire, I had like negative desire. I couldn't access my desires, my fantasies, because there was like program in my female line that was like, well, you're not supposed to have a desire. You are supposed to be a wife and a mother, but not a lover. That lover archetype's a whore. So
Hmm.
don't do that, but like serve and take care and tend to. And I did all of those things really well. But I really was very disconnected from my body, from my pleasure, due to all of these things. And so seeing that and now being where we're at, I mean, it's a complete night and day difference. I'm so connected to my pleasure. My desire is fully online. Intimacy used to have moments of pain. There
Mhm.
wasn't pleasure. I couldn't like drop into my body. And now it's like it's not painful at all. Like I'm just really, you know, really instigating. I'm super activated. I want it. Like I feel like a completely different person, who actually loves her yoni, who actually loves her body. You know, I struggled with body image my entire life, and I don't even have that issue anymore either. You know,
Yeah.
it really feels like so much of what I experienced sexually before, that all feels like it's so disconnected from who I am now. It's like a past life in this
Yeah.
lifetime.
Yeah. Britton, what would you say?
Yeah, yeah, our sex life has gone from into mystical realms, like
Yeah.
it's so beautiful. And I think what makes it so magical is that there's this deep, through the healing of infidelity, and not just infidelity, but like so many things,
Yeah.
together we have transcended, the infidelity awakened within us the realization of just what all of the things that were out of balance. And as there were definitely was parts where I was trying to nudge her into her healing more because she was resistant to the sexual part. She was tackling the mother wound, she was tackling some of the other things, the codependent relationships, etc. And but the sexual stuff was there was so much trauma around it because of me and my actions, that it was like hard for her to want to dive into that, even though she knew she needed to. So there was like, I feel like some good pressure from my side, but at the same time, like it helped balance the flow so that we moved through the sexual healing at a rate that she could handle. Um, One of the biggest parts of our awakening sexually was when we went to a week-long retreat, which we were calling in some sort of new sexual re-education. And it was called ISTA, or the International School of Temple Arts, and it's a beautiful program that's been running for, I think, 25 years or something. And at that, we spent a week together being re-educated, going into some of our darkness and allowing sexual energy to be reactivated within us in a way that we had neither of us had done. And when we came out of that week, we had some magical experiences, definitely some incredible quantum shifts in our frequency. And when we came back from that, we immediately knew that we could no longer live in our neighborhood in Utah because we were not at the same vibration as those people. And that wasn't like a judgment, it was just a realization, like
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
we were like awakened
Yeah.
sexually,
Yeah.
and it was like time to move on and find a community.
Right. I'm imagining too, though, that you had your own healing to do around the sexual messaging for men in the Mormon Church. I mean, in our larger culture in general, but especially in Mormonism, that there would have been, I mean, you might have had libido, but you would have had other things that you had to transform and shed.
So many. Oh, so many. So I'll highlight a couple. Like one of them was just the guilt, like the guilt of having, hand jobs on the daily when I was in high school, or like, some premarital sex, anything. Masturbation was a big one. Like masturbation was all off limits, but as a young man, especially with my sex drive that was repressed, it was so hard to not do it. And so when I did it, there was
Mm,
always guilt associated with everything. And so I remember one day where I was contemplating all of that guilt, and I was contemplating my sexual weight. It was actually before ISTA. And I was like, I came to the realization on my own that I'm like, again, this is through the trying to get through the Mormon paradigm, but it was like, it's all just about consent.
mm.
That's all it is. It's just consent. As long as people are agreeing, there is nothing that's wrong with anything. So that immediately dropped all the chains around all of my actions, but also how I viewed everything else. People that were in BDSM kink, they weren't weird. They were exploring. People that are gay or lesbian, like they're just following what feels right for them. And I didn't have to hold anything towards anyone. And so all of those judgments fell in a minute, and it was like, as actually in a moment, and it was just such a freeing feeling that I was like, wow, I totally get it. So
I imagine this impacts how you're going to raise your children. I mean, in general, of course, but even around sexuality, right? And talking about sex and relationships and intimacy? I don't know how old the kids are. Is this stuff that you've already begun to share with
Yeah,
them in any
we
way?
have yeah, we have four children. Our oldest just turned 14. So we have 14, then our daughter will be 11 soon, 9, and 4.5. And it has fundamentally transformed how we speak to our kids too about these things. Like there is, as someone, part of my trauma that I had to heal was actual sexual trauma from my childhood. And so I am a victim of sexual abuse, and so we are both very strong advocates for protecting children, but we found that you protect through truth.
Hmm.
You protect through honesty. You protect through not shaming the body, using the right words to speak about body parts. And our 4-year-old is a very free, embodied, beautiful little girl who, here on our property in Colorado, we have a river, and we as adults, we go naked, skinny dipping in the river with our children nearby, and bodies are normalized. Like there's not this inherent weirdness that makes that experience where my child's present sexual in any way, right? Like we're really conscious about
Yeah.
how we hold ourselves and how we, and so for our youngest, that's normal. Our oldest, he's 14 and exploring his own impulses like nothing is shamed, like, and we talk a lot about consent, we talk a lot about safety, and yeah, his own ability, I mean, it's been really actually liberating for us as parents to witness him being free to explore things that we were completely shunned and shamed and felt so like sinful and guilty for, right? And so yeah, we have a very open but safe container here in our home where the children are protected, and we found a way that feels really good to do that.
Yeah. So circling back to the infidelity, on this end of the healing journey, at least where you are so far, probably not at the end, but at this stage, did you need to go back, or did you go back and have any processing around the infidelity that was, didn't happen at first, or was this journey together enough to be the healing you needed?
We have done quite a few different medicine journeys, MDMA journeys. We ended up, after our ISTA experience, like Britton said, we realized we couldn't live in Utah anymore. We sold our house and we moved our family to Bali. Like we sold everything that we owned and we just moved across the world. And that evolved into an 18-month long pilgrimage that included Bali, Vietnam, France, Ireland, England, Scotland, and Egypt. And all along the way, we found various opportunities to do even deeper healing, more integration of our shadows, more awareness of, the dynamic in our partnership that resulted in the infidelity, and then also did various programs that helped us both tap into what our dream ideal relationship actually would look like. It all kind of started because we decided we were going to do what we called live the full fuck yes. So what does that look like? Is that full fuck yes together? Is that, we came to thresholds very often where we were
Mm,
like, maybe we're not meant to stay together, but we are meant to heal
right, right.
individually, right? And what does that look like? And as we healed individually, we also realized that we were healing together. And it became like our whole life really centered around healing and calling in
And it
experiences.
still does
Yeah, it still
center
does.
around that. And
Yeah,
I would just say that all of it's connected, Jessa. Like we, the infidelity it was because I wasn't getting the connection. I wasn't finding the emotional, as much as infidelity is conceptually thought around as a sexual, betrayal. It's really a lot of times men are doing it because of emotional connection as well,
right,
and women
right.
are because of emotional connection, and it's probably very balanced around that. Um, and so yeah, I was unsatisfied in both my sexual and emotional places. I didn't have the vocabulary of how to like go into like, hey Carleigh, how can we heal this, like
Right,
it
right,
wasn't
right.
even there. But the whole journey, which we are calling the magical story of us, and it's an example of how a couple can overcome great challenges and heal and find a magical life. um, that has been central to sex. central to the sexual energy, the life force energy. It's central to our pleasure, central to our connection emotionally and sexually. So it's very connected. We've been circling around the infidelity thing through all the way through the healing journey. And like she said, there has been some incredible threshold moments where we're like, are we going to make it? But in those moments where we thought, if I speak my truth, if I tell her how I feel, or if she tells me how she feels, um, that's going to be it. That's the end of it. But every time that we've offered up that honesty and we've been vulnerable with each other, it has deepened our bond.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, like, our bond, our connection is incredible. It's hard to even talk about in words. It's hard to describe. It's ineffable.
Yeah.
It's something that transcends this life. It is very, very much a spiritual um energetic connection that we experience together in our relationship now. And because of that, our sex is mystical, like
Yeah.
every time we drop in, it's mystical level. It's just, so we just love it. We love each other and we're obsessed with our life together. So um, we've really become passionate about co-creating together.
Yeah. This, what you're describing is a really beautiful illustration of what one of the people I studied with, David Snarsh, used to say, which is we only get as good a relationship as we're willing to lose. So it's like that ability to go up to the brink and be willing, like maybe this is the end, but we still have to be honest. We still have to grow. And then you end up in this, incredible place.
Yeah, it's a very good way of saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to risk it all. You got to go all in, like
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you
And
go
there's
all in
risk
with your
in that.
chips, you go
Yeah.
all in, then there's a great reward.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you want to leave the listeners with in terms of where they could reach out or what you have, uh, you know, what you might want to promote if you have anything or a website
Yeah.
or anything like that?
Yeah, so we do couples counseling coaching where we've got an infidelity program, and Carleigh's an active astrologer, and so because that's been a big part of our healing journey, which we kind of didn't really touch on today. But it's been an incredibly powerful tool, astrology, for us. And so we have a website, it's themagicalstoryofus.com. And on there, people can kind of get an overview of our healing journey and what we've gone through, and then learn about some of our offerings and the astrological and other types of coaching and programs we offer. So, yeah, themagicalstoryofus.com. And did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple of different Instagram accounts too,
Should tell them
but
about
Oh,
Misty too
okay.
much, maybe.
yeah,
Yeah.
one of them is really fun. Some of the ways in which we play now is we like to consider ourselves erotic artists. And so we have one of our Instagram accounts is called The Mystic and Witch, or Mystic and Witch, and it's just our embodied erotic artistry. We recently, last week here in Colorado, had a shibari photo shoot where we dressed up almost kind of like Viking inspired, and I got tied to a tree. And, and so it was super hot. And so we're yeah, we showcase that. We showcase on our website, there's different offerings. One of them is astrology. Like you said, we do astrologically aligned coaching where we look at what the current transits are doing and how they're impacting us individually and guide people through that for themselves as well. That is actually one of the ways in which we really were able to be held in our healing through this whole process. And so
Yeah.
we bring that now to those that we work with.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much for having us.